like more combined, richer relationship that you have overall. But I think that there's a lot going on with the loss of kind of social capital and connections that really predates a lot of the modern technology.
The goal of what I'm trying most to learn about is how we can structure the technologies that we use in the future to get toward this future I think you're imagining of more human connection in more ways. I'm curious, you brought up the other big pillar of AI. And in some of your conversations, I'm thinking of a conversation with Tim Ferriss in particular, you talked about a lot of different use cases of AI. And they seem to me to fall on somewhat of a spectrum. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, you mentioned automatic real-time translation. Mm-hmm. It's like basically the Star Trek translator, universal translator.
I think we're pretty much there.
Yeah. And that's one example on one end of the spectrum where some people might argue that there is a chance that someone is less likely, for example, to learn a language because we can all speak to each other in real time in different languages. I think nobody would really argue that therefore we shouldn't have that kind of universal translator, right?
Also,
like,
a lot of people still learn Latin and Greek.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so.
and so I think that end of the spectrum is something like technologies that really measurably unlock our humanity because they remove a struggle between people. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there are a lot of educational things, for example, where the struggle is kind of the point, right? Like it's like building a muscle. Like I can think of so many times in my life where like the reason why I was doing something was not the output. It was the fact that I was trying so hard to do it. There's one example in the Tim Ferriss interview where you talked about your kids struggling to articulate themselves emotionally. And adults very much have the same problem. And you talked about AI as a way to help them articulate those emotions.
Yeah.
And I thought about all of the many times in my life where I have struggled to articulate my emotions and how I really could have used some help in those moments. And I also found myself thinking about the times when that was really building a muscle, where like the act of struggling to communicate with someone and understand what they wanted from me was important to my development. And so my question is, if you think about that as a spectrum between things that are really important to our humanity and the struggle being removed is helpful versus things where the struggle is the point and it unlocks something about our humanity and is important to preserve, like building a muscle. How do you draw the line between those things, and how do we ensure that the muscles that we're building for this future are stronger and not weaker?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think we're always going to find new things to struggle with. And I mean, you can always get better at communicating with other people and kind of expressing yourself and understanding other people. So having a tool that can help you do that better isn't going to mean that like, oh, now we perfectly understand and I think maybe one of the most functional aspects of this, you're already seeing a lot of these AI models really help people with coding, right? Like a generation ago, before I was getting started, a lot of coding was like really low-level system software, and then by the time that I got into it, there's a little bit of that, but you can make websites pretty easily, make apps pretty easily, and I think in 20 years or a lot sooner than that, you're going to basically be in a world where kids will be able to just describe the things that they want and build incredibly complex pieces of software. So it's in that world, are kids going to be not struggling? I don't think so. I think that they're going to be just expressing their creativity, and it'll be this kind of constant iterative feedback loop around like, okay, like I took a few minutes to describe this thing, and like this whole like amazing virtual world was created that I can now see on my glasses or whatever, but like these things are not exactly what I want them to be. So now I need to like go back and edit them. I don't know. I think that there's always more.
Another way to get at this.
It's one of the things that I think makes people so good. It just there's always more to do.
We'll always find the struggle.
Yeah.
Another way to get at this is if you play this out to make the tools even better. In like 10 years, let's say your kids are in high school. Are there ways that you would want them using AI because you think it would accelerate them intellectually, and ways that you would advocate for them not to use it, or things that you would have concerns about?
I mean, I think that there's some things that you need to be able to do yourself. I think that that's a lot of the basic fear that people have around this.
I agree with that.
Is that while we're building these amazing tools, we get away from this self-confidence and ability of being able to do like this basic stuff yourself. So it's like, all right, you have a calculator. But it's still good to be able to do kind of basic math in your head, because there are a lot of things that come up throughout the day that you just want to have a general numeracy around, right? That often they're not expressed in numerical terms, but just in terms of understanding trends or understanding arguments that people are making, you kind of need to understand the shape of how numbers come together. And so I think one of the big debates is like, should we still teach our kids to program computers? Even though you're going to have these tools in the future that are just so much more powerful than anything that we have now to produce incredibly complicated pieces of software, I think the answer to that is probably yes, because I think teaching someone how to code is teaching them a way to think rigorously. And that even if they're not doing most of the code production, I think it's important that you kind of have the ability to think in that way. And I think it's going to just make you generally a better thinker and better person. So yeah, maybe that's like this generation's version of calculators. It's like, so you'll want to use the calculator, but you'll also want to be able to generally do without it. Other ones like language, I don't know. I mean, different people can come out. I mean, I think this is one of the interesting questions about parenting these days. Is like, is just kind of like what's important to teach your kids in an era where so much is going to change over the time that they're even in school. Language, I think you can make similar arguments. I think that there's a lot of, it's probably going to be less functionally relevant in the future to learn multiple languages, but it sort of helps you think in different ways. I've found from the languages that I've studied that a lot of it, yeah, you learn about the structure of your own language. You also learn about the culture, right? Because so much of how things are expressed in different places is tied to the nuance and the history of kind of how. So I think like that's all valuable and interesting stuff to get into. But then, I don't know, at the same time, we only have so many hours in the day, so people need to prioritize what they're going to learn. And it may be that, okay, in a world with perfect translation, which, by the way, we basically just announced on the Ray-Ban Metas that now you're going to be able to just like you go to different countries. We're starting out. Wild. Yeah, we're starting out with just a few languages, but we'll roll it out to more. And you could be traveling anywhere, and you have your glasses, and they just translate in real time in your ear. So it's wild. So I think people are going to need to choose what they want to focus on going forward.
How do the developments that we've been talking about in AI intersect with social media and the platforms that most people use today? There's a future where there's generated images and generated text and maybe AI influencers. How does generative AI change how social media feels in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really deep one. There's already been one big shift, which is that social media started out as people primarily interacting with their friends. And now it is, at least half of the content is basically people interacting with creators or content that's not created by people who they kind of personally know. So we sort of already have that paradigm. And I think AI is probably going to accelerate that. It will give all these people additional tools, right? So your friends will create kind of funnier memes and more interesting content. That'll come from a lot of different ways. I think some of it will be, okay, your friends have glasses and they capture a bunch of stuff, and before they might have not been able to edit it to make it interesting, or maybe it was just too much work, or they didn't even realize that they captured something amazing, but now the AI is like, hey, I like made this thing for you out of your content. And it's like, okay, that's awesome. Like people enjoy that. Creators, obviously, kind of much more specialized skills are going to be able to use even more advanced AI tools to make more compelling content. But then I think that there will be a bunch of kind of green field type stuff where maybe in the future there will be content that is purely generated by AI, by the system, personalized for you. Maybe it's summarizing things that are out there that are going to be interesting. Maybe it's just producing something funny that makes you laugh. This is going to be like a very kind of deep zone that there's a lot to experiment with. I know there are going to be AI creators as well as creators building AI versions of themselves. I mean, that's a thing that we just showed too at Connect. Is basically, I mean, if you're a creator, one of the big challenges is like, all right, there are only so many hours in the day, and your community probably has a nearly unlimited demand to interact with you, and you want to interact with them because you're trying to grow your community. I mean, that's both socially and from a business perspective. That's sort of, growing the community is an important part of what every creator does. So, okay, if we can make it so that each creator can basically make an AI artifact that their community can interact with, people will be clear that it's not the actual creator themselves, but it's almost like a piece of digital art that you're producing, like an interactive sculpture or something that it's like you train it to, here's the context that I want it to have, here's the topics I want it to communicate on, here's stuff that I wanted to stay away from. You're giving your community something to interact with when you can't be there to kind of answer all the questions. And